probably didn't, is an animal rights activist and is also an animal conservationist who's into animal conservation. I hope I got it right. Back in June of 2020, Gary Moorhead with guest spot on a podcast show where he has been featured is Gary Moorhead. The most worst thing to do is abuse not only people but animals as well and turn around and lie about it. And that's what Scientology does. The anti-Scientology movement is a big among all the former Scientologists, along with other advocates who were never even in the organization, took part of it. Now they are all exposing the organization. Allah was thrilled to have him on his show with all the other anti-Scientologists before him in their movement. On a Scientology hate site, with everyone on that site claiming that Gary had abused animals. A source said he or she would say he or she was very doubtful that it ever happened, since they have a history of lying and spreading rumors. David Miscavige is usually sitting behind the camera and would instruct everyone to lie on camera. Excuse me. And spreads that as a real story, where in reality it never ever even happened. Even though we all recall that not only they abuse people like children and the elderly, but they also abuse animals as well. They would have a history of abusing animals in their organization, with David beating his staff and most everybody to go out and abuse animals belonging to their former members. Not only they abuse animals to their belonging to their former members, they also abuse animals belonging to critics, journalists, because they are saying, they're saying bad things about the organization or Scientology, whatever they like to call it. They also have a hate site that would slam their former members. They are doing it to each and every one around them. And in particular story, they have claimed that Gary had abused animals in the past, and some of them current Scientologists came out and said that he had abused animals. And all the members who came forward and claimed that Gary abused animals, but at the same time, each and every person that made these claims were hiding behind job titles in Scientology. And they weren't using their actual names. Now, I had contact a source and did some checking in her, or he or she said that they have a history of spreading lies to hurt their former members. So it might not even be the truth. So let's just keep an open mind. Just keep notes of it. Animal rights activist and PETA. Of course, you probably have an open mind to that. Please, just look into your hearts. Scientology has a hate site that would slam their former members. They are doing that to each other and everyone around them as well. So it's a really very abusive organization that claim to be a church. Not only that Scientology has a history of abusing people and animals, so that organizations is not to be trusted. And their leader, David Miscavige, is usually sitting behind the camera and would instruct everyone to lie and say it like it was a real story, where in reality, it never even happened. Miscavige also hatched up an idea of putting hatched up an idea of putting rat poison in every dog food and has them bleeding out. So all that, when I mentioned in other stories that private investigators and OSA putting all the rat poisons in food, in dog food, was all his idea. He also never admits that he's wrong. He just keeps on hurting everyone and everything around him. That would include children. And guess what? Scientology believes that children are adults in a little person's body, which is the most heartless thing, the most cruelest thing to say about a child. This shouldn't even be considered to be spiritual. How is that spiritual? It's not. And I'll be having a story maybe sometimes in 2 weeks talking about it, so it might come up again. But one of those former Scientologists that left the cult admit that he did do all the wrong things when they were there, which is admirable. It's great. Even though David is an evil narcissist that won't admit that he's wrong and loves to blame other people for his mistakes. Then all in all, Scientology is the most horrific organization that is harming people and animals. Then they would ultimately be dangerous. Forget other members to stalk former members and kill their dogs. Nevertheless, men like Yasha Allah, who is an animal rights and a conservationist, into animal conservation, that's passionate about being an advocate for animal rights. When back in June 2020, Gary Moorhead, with a guest spot on a podcast show where he has been featured, were ultimately Miscavige is also had hatched up an idea of putting rat poison in every dog food and has them bleeding out. And ultimately, he would instruct people to claim that Gary Moorhead abuses animals, and those people were hiding behind their job titles and not using their names. That just says it all. Then finally, David is an evil narcissist that won't admit that he's wrong and loves to blame other people for his mistakes. Also, in conclusion, they are not only cruel to people, but they're also cruel to animals. After all, they would do it to their members. They do it to their former members, and they do it to people outside of Scientology. And they do that to animals. Then at the end, Scientology in the future, they will have history of being the most notorious cult and not a religion. Well, that should do it for now. I might be back later to do more stories to try and finish off all the stories that were deleted. See you later.